What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another installment of the Talk from Dublin series. We're doing pretty well here, Colm, as always. Colm's here, being my co-host, being like the man here to reel in the madness.
Back for another week.
That is, this madness. As always, I'm your host here, Dan. So how are you doing, Colm? Are you enjoying this?
No, I hate it. Honestly, he just drags me here every week against my will.
It's a fine journey of podcasting.
Yeah, I mean, I must like it if I travel 2 hours, to record it. So
2 hours. No, you go back in the basement. You stay there for another week.
Oh yeah.
Get in the cave, man.
Yeah,
just stay in that cave.
Get those chains back on.
So we're going to continue on from the whole Stanford prison experiment, because originally we're actually meant to go on about this experiment the first time. However, I'm bad at communicating here, people. Bad at communicating
Dan
my points.
over here, the person who's in charge of the podcast.
So my original plan was, I knew I didn't have enough time to actually go over to the BBC experiment and watch the TV series.
You tell me that, but no.
See, in my head, I felt like the message I sent was going like, this thing called BBC experiment, very similar to Stanford. It'd be interesting to talk about.
It was great. And hold on. I saw this message like midnight the night before we were going to record, so I was like, Jesus. I was like,
what do you mean midnight? I sent out like on a Thursday.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Regardless. Your problem as well.
Okay. It's both our problems. So anyway, at like midnight, I see this or whatever, and I'm like, oh Jesus, Dan must have watched this whole thing. He said it's really good. I was like, he's going to be talking about this tomorrow. I was like, I better look this up. So I was there. It's about 4 hours in total, wasn't it, Dan? Yeah. I was.
I think 5. Going on.
Yeah. 5 a.m. comes. I'm after watching the whole BBC experiment. Anyway. I'm like, okay, that's great. I know exactly what to talk about for the podcast tomorrow. Get to Dan's house. I'm like, yeah, God, that BBC experiment was great, wasn't it? He goes, oh, the BBC experiment? Yeah. Oh, I haven't seen it. I'm like, what the fuck do you mean you haven't seen it? I was up till 5 a.m. looking at it for this podcast.
Yeah, so when I was sending a message, in my head, I felt like this is the way I wanted to be interpreted, was going, I don't have the time. Colin, what's one of us can at least talk about it, but unfortunately you can't.
Men just are not good at communicating. Just full stop.
You also can't read my mind.
Yeah,
looking back on, like, there's no way I expressed the fact.
You even said it was good.
Yeah, probably.
Like, you literally said, "Oh, it was great. Yeah, it was good." I was like, "Okay, well, he must have watched this."
Yeah, you gotta fake it till you make it. You talk utter shite,
and
make everyone else believe it.
The foundation of the whole podcast.
So we messed around, changed a few things, decided to turn this into 2-parter because I lack time. I had enough time to go through all this, but now we're finally going to talk about this whole BBC experiment. So this happened back in 2003, 2004.
2002. Says the guy who literally just said, I've done my research this time.
Yeah, I did. I know the title. You see there in the Word document? It's right there at the top. So
2001, they devised the experiment. Then 2002, it was carried out.
Grand.
There you go.
So this, maybe just want to talk about this. It was kind of a big parallel to the Stanford experiment that was done by Dr. Zimbardo, where they were going from similar angles, but trying to add in variables where there was no variables in the Stanford experiment. So it started off with a grand total of 15?
Yeah, 15
people.
Selected. Out of 322 people applied to the newspaper ad, and then 15 were selected.
This is just true newspaper ads.
Yeah, I think so.
Imagine trying to do that today.
Yeah,
like,
no one reads newspaper.
Jimmy, put it in the newspaper. It's like, it didn't work last time, man. It's not going to work again.
No one reads
put
newspaper.
It in the fucking newspaper.
We got 2 applicants.
Right,
we're doing a study with 2 people.
That is a great way. It's sidetracked as always. But I've told you this before. I remember there was a game developer decided to do a thing with terms and service where they actually put a paragraph in saying that the first 100 people to contact this number gets £100. They should do that with newspaper ads.
Yeah.
Because no one
just
ever...
to see if it actually fucking works.
Sure, it's like, do I actually get money? He's like, yeah, come to this dress. Great. He goes to dress and they beat him up.
Yeah. No, I actually went to the shop for a newspaper there for me mum last week, and I get up to the counter anyway, giving newspaper, and she's like, who's that for?
Yeah.
And I'm like, me. And she's like, it's not for you. Who's that for? I'm like, right, it's for me mum. She was like, right, no young people read papers these days.
I'll be the exception.
It's all online.
No, I have to read newspapers for college.
You literally have to.
Yeah, but I can actually say, this is for me, thanks. Then I'm going to take this and go away.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the main way for the BBC experiment, Colin here was just telling me there, they took the 15 people they selected out of 300 and something and broke them up into 5 groups of 3. And each of these kind of rate on particular character traits. So basically like authoritarian, if they're willing to conform to authority, go against authority, like those would be certain categories. And after breaking up the groups, they picked one from each group to be the guards and the rest became the prisoners. With the BBC experiment, the psychologists Alex Haslam and Stephen Riker wanted to tackle more of a kind of a group dynamic. So by having a diversity of ideology and mentalities in the two groups, they want to kind of see how that will work in kind of this like the power struggle between kind of prisoners and guards. To start off the whole thing, decided for the first 2 days of the experiment, they were giving the prisoners the opportunity to go for promotion. So one of the prisoners would have been able to qualify as a guard. You were saying this kind of caused division at the start, right?
At the start, yeah, I think the kind of idea was they looked at, I forget the name of it now, it was some social theory done which states that if they have personal gain at stake, what they'll do is they'll focus on themselves initially. Yeah. So when it said, okay, someone's going to get a promotion, they focus on their own, how they can get themselves that promotion. Then as soon as they gave the promotion, they said, okay, that's it. There's going to be no more swapping between prisoners and guards at all for the rest of the study. So then it switched to the kind of thing of, okay, I've nothing to gain here. I know my role. I'm stuck now in this role as a prisoner, and therefore we need to work together now as a group, as a collective, against the guards.
There was an extra part to this where the guard essentially had the end say to choose who's going to be promoted to being a guard. And there was a number of people in the prison environment where they had kind of like strong leadership qualities, people who bolstered the guard's position and kind of give them like a stronger position for future of the experiment. In the end, they essentially picked one of like the weaker prisoner members, people like someone that they believed would be more likely to conform with the guard's mentality throughout the whole thing, and essentially leaving leadership figures for the prisoners. So instead of strengthening the position, the guards weakened their position in fear of kind of someone coming in taking over or going against what they deemed as the norm in those 2 days.
The first 3 days they kind of had a system in place. They kind of knew the way they wanted to sort of run things. So as you were saying, like they wanted someone that could fit in seamlessly and go along with what they're saying rather than come in and try to radically change the way things operated for them. So they kind of were afraid of a strong figure coming in, even though that's what they actually needed.
The last difference between the BBC experiment and the Stanford experiment was there was an independent panel of 5 people who could call in at any stage to feel like the experiment was getting out of hand. The BBC experiment, for 2 psychologists behind them, they wanted to create a scenario where there was no involvement in themselves in the whole thing, and also create multiple kind of fail-safes where if it did get out of hand, if they were getting too involved with the experiment, it could be shut down. And so they're, unlike in Stanford experiment, they limit the amount of influence they could physically have on the experiment themselves, which can easily see from the start. Because like one of the massive differences from say Stanford and BBC experiment is the guards struggled incredibly to get into their roles from the start. Throughout the whole thing, they were given questionnaires, kind of writing like, what do you feel about your current scenario? How do you feel? Like, just random bollocks. They were saying to get their mentality. And from the questionnaires, it mirrored kind of the similar kind of psych checks that were given to actual prisoners and the guards, where the prisoners were able to adapt to the role incredibly quickly. They accepted the fact like this power dynamic exists. I'm in an environment where my rights are, I have no rights, I have no luxuries, and they've accepted that. Where the guards were very reluctant to use their new power against the prisoners to keep people in check, and very uncomfortable in their position. And I'm pretty sure this mirrors current prison environments where prisoners just adopt a rogue and they're okay with where it is. They've accepted it, and guards are nearly kind of uncomfortable with this kind of power they have over individuals.
Okay, so in the early days, basically, you'd one of the guards talking about how even when they put on their uniforms, they could like feel this sort of rush of power. And they kind of thought to themselves, like, it's scary how quickly it can affect your mentality and how you look on things. And they kind of were very hesitant in their use of power because they didn't want, like, one of them drew comparison to Nazi Germany, like in the World Wars. It's basically like how easily it is when you're in this kind of position of power, and you're seen to have limited responsibility and consequences, that it's easy to become quite corrupt quite quickly. So one of the things they did was, on the first day, I think it was, the guards themselves kind of agreed, okay, well look, if we've any leftover sausages from dinner, what they did was they brought in the first cell of prisoners, and they said to them, okay, look, we know you're in there, your food is not very good, our food is great, we have like proper banquet food, we're not going to eat it all, so here you go, do you want some sausages? We're going to actually let you eat some of our leftovers. And what the prisoners actually did, which really caught them off guard, was they said, do you know what, no, we're going to stand in solidarity with the rest of our prisoners, and we're not going to accept your handouts. And that kind of shocked the guards. It kind of took away a bit of their power, because the fact that the prisoners were not going to sort of play by their rules. It made them look weak, the guards, because they were extending a helping hand, and the prisoners were like, no, we don't need you. It kind of made them almost look embarrassed in a way.
Yeah, it does seem kind of like a huge power play on the prisoners' part, because the guards essentially gave prisoners power. They gave them like an ability to make a decision, and by essentially rejecting what like the guards were seeing as like kind of like the helping hand, going like, oh, we're like, come on, we're sound, look at all this. Like,
it's like, we don't need you.
Yeah, the prisoners kind of really like kind of enforce like their own form of power, going like, we have our own power here, we're gonna hold on to it. And throughout the whole experiment, you have kind of small groups of prisoners constantly poking out, constantly trying like pushing their limits and finding kind of like the little bits in power and taking advantage of a system where the guards were reluctant to actually use their power. From the start, it's easy to see that there was no kind of unified force from both sides. The guards were heavily divided because everyone had kind of different opinions of how they should use their abilities. You have one guard in particular where he was, I think like he was a millionaire. He was like kind of a CEO of kind of a tech company. Yeah, and he was like very pushing, going like, we need to be very careful what we're doing here. Be like, treat these people like people. Don't see them as like kind of animals or anything like that. Like we need to.
Yeah, in his company, basically, he is a very sort of cooperative approach to the way he runs his company. Yeah. So he involves the people lower down a lot. So he was kind of one of the less authoritarian figures, and that's one of the problems with the guards. They actually had no real leader at all. And then when they did choose a prisoner, they got someone who was just going to be quiet and go along with what they said. So they actually had no real leadership to pull them together.
The lack of unity really stands out. On the third and fourth day, the psychologists, they threw in an ex-union negotiator onto the prisoner side, and this is an obvious leadership figure. Like, his entire job beforehand was negotiating on behalf and like on the many, up against employers, up against these essentially authority figures, and getting good deals out of it. And he instantly took control of the entire environment. Like, he was making demands and doing all this and being completely combative against the guards, making statements going like, this like unacceptable like environments, like listing off things and going like, this is not a prison, I don't know what I'm working in, and no one's telling me exactly what we're working on. From that point, it eventually dissolved into negotiations. The prisoners had a vote, and they voted to put in the ex-union worker, and going like, alright, he's going to lead talks first, and he's able to get a great deal, able to get hot drinks, better meals and all that, and actually kind of work with the heating and the environment.
There wasn't much direction before.
Yeah, no, it wasn't even like impressive. It was nearly kind of sad how easy he was able to just just pull in the reins and take full control of the entire situation without even being in for a full day.
Because you remember, there was that other prisoner who was starting to kind of show his dominance a little bit.
Yeah.
And basically they had a vote between him and this new trade union, and immediately they went with the trade union.
Now I remember how like the main talk came from, because
the keys, stealing the keys.
One of the prisoners essentially nicked the keys. Team like working on his own as an individual was able to make kind of like a power play and like was able to nick the keys, and so that became a major talking point. And so once the union worker came in, he used the keys, the bargaining chip, and used that to get better supplies, get better food and hot drinks in.
Basically, the guy who nicked the keys in the first place, he wanted to use them for immediate gain. So I think it was something like he was trying to negotiate them for extra cigarettes or extra something immediately. Whereas this union worker said, no, we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is we are going to create a system where we go in every day to the guards and we get to lay out our issues on the table, and we get negotiations, and we get to actually, if any issues arise, we get to solve them every day rather than just getting instant sort of gratification immediately from an extra few cigarettes or something. So he was kind of better able to leverage that kind of that event, and the prisoners ended up going with him, even though that was literally the first day he arrived in the prison.
Yeah, like in under 24 hours, like Haslam and Riker, they instantly took him out of the experiment because he proved his point. He was there, like he proved a thing. He was a unifying figure for the prisoners, and so kind of essentially create like a unifying moment for the two sides. And with him gone, creating the power vacuum in the prisoners, they kind of were looking back saying, all right, can this be recreated now? We've taken away the obvious leadership figure. Can they double up their efforts and actually come like pull up together again? And it didn't really happen until later on for the experiment, because again, the prisoners start breaking on into their own groups, just fending for themselves and trying to get the upper hand wherever they could, but never as this unified force.
Yeah, like there was one cell down at the end with the former, he was a minister, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think he was like the born again Catholic.
Or a pastor or a minister. I'm probably getting.
I saw him as the born again Catholic.
Yeah, but he was an actual. He was
Yeah,
a
he was-
youth minister, was it? Or
Yeah,
a youth
something like
pastor,
that.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you had an ex-heroin addict.
Yeah.
And then the third guy, what was the third guy?
I did, well, I can't remember, but he
Yeah.
played little. He played little
Yeah,
role.
he
Like
did,
the main two dynamic was
But it
kind
was
of
interesting
minister.
to see as well the different types of people.
They took like a large broad of people from many different walks of life, and at the end of the experiment, like as stuff was just falling apart around them, like these were just everyday people. Like I think you had someone someone from the government office, you had the ex-union worker, like a minister, like you even had like a CEO of a major company.
Yeah.
But all these from all walks of life in Britain. And it all took like 8 days to everything fall apart and everything dissolve into.
Unbelievable, yeah. We'll talk later about what happens. It's crazy what happens at the end. But back to the point there, that kind of cell at the end, they were the troublemakers.
Yeah.
They kind of immediately, I think it was. I personally think it was out of both boredom and a sense of they bonded by their mutual sort of
because
their mutual want to kind of cause trouble and to kind of stir shit with the guards.
I think the minister felt cheated out because he
that's a
really
good
wanted
point,
to have
yeah.
a guard position, so he felt cheated out. By
He
not being
got
picked up.
denied
Yeah.
the guard position in the interviews.
And the ex-heroin addict was just a straight up nearly anarchist. He was
Yeah.
full on against authority and just wanted to mess with the system.
But that kind of helped them bond. They came together and they were kind of plotting and scheming. You know, how can we wind up the guards now? They were kind of looking for who they thought was the weakest guard. They were trying to put the guards up against each other. They were kind of sowing the seeds of doubt in the guards' minds. So they were kind of having great fun, like psychologically trying to manipulate these guards. And that's one of the main differences as well between this and the Stanford experiment. Because in the Stanford experiment, the guards had all the power, and in this it was actually crazy because when they did tests as well, they'd measure their saliva for cortisol, which is a good marker of stress, and that they found that the guards were much more stressed throughout the experiment. The prisoners kind of relaxed and adapted and settled into their roles really well, whereas the guards were actually finding it incredibly stressful.
This is kind of one of the main areas Haslam and Riker kind of wanted to focus on. They really wanted to kind of delve in on the resistance mentality of humanity. Good. This is one of the flaws they kind of try to pick out from the Stanford experiment. They're going it doesn't go in on essentially the persistent nature of humanity to resist against tyranny and eventually overthrow. Because human history is we are too consistent on developing revolutions to overthrow what we believe is a tyrannical power. And there's tons of examples throughout history of you essentially have a lower class or an oppressed class fighting up against their tyrannical rulers.
The British.
Yeah. Irish history for 700 years.
I have to get that in every single podcast.
700 years of oppression, man. We eventually got there. This prison experiment would be kind of a great way of seeing it. And we do see that briefly in Stanford experiment, because after first day there's already resistance. You already have people, you have one of the prison cells at Stanford experiment boarding up their door and refusing to comply. And one of the members, one of the prisoners who kind of faked his mental breakdown from the start, he started from resistance and just refused to comply. And from the BBC one, from the start there, you can easily see kind of resist mentality, but there was no tyranny to resist to. It essentially dissolved.
Yeah.
Instead of starting going deal with overreaching guard, they just done it for the crack.
And the interesting thing as well is back to the point about the study trying to be kind of as well focused on group dynamics, because you'd see even certain cells would react differently. Like those three people, in theory, they're pseudo randomly selected, right? So there shouldn't be any major real differences in the way each cell react to power. But you'd find certain cells would just be completely compliant and just want to be quiet and get on with it. Same with the Stanford prison experiment.
Yep.
Whereas other cells, even if there's only one person who kind of initiated the revolution as such, that'd affect the whole mentality of everyone in the cell. It kind of really how people can be influenced so easy by this whole sort of group mentality kind of thing.
Yeah. So with the two rebellious members, kind of the ex-heroin addict and the minister, they instantly latch on and quickly identified the weakest link in the guard circle, and essentially made it, I think called it Project Mayhem.
Yeah.
Kind of I know that's a reference to something. What is?
It was a movie, wasn't it?
Oh my god, Project Mayhem. No, it's
What?
Oh, what is it called? No. Fuck.
Right, we gotta Google
the Brad Pitt film where he's not real.
Wait, what?
Fight Club.
Fight Club?
Yeah,
Right.
that's the main thing. Their main thing is called Project
You
Mayhem.
broke rule one.
I missed
damn
it.
God.
Came in late,
I
man.
never even saw that.
Came in late.
Anyway.
That I knew it sounded familiar. I was sitting there phrased like, what does Project Mayhem? Yeah, that has to be a reference to Fight Club.
Yeah, it's Fight Club. Yeah, it says Fight Club. Yeah.
But the whole point of Project Mayhem was just to completely like destroy the guard system, kind of like focus on the weakest thing. From there, kind of gain some power out the whole thing. And so they kind of done the like a dual approach and like whole psychology aspect where they started befriending him, trying like get on his good side, get on and kind of
one of them played chess with him.
Yeah, again play chess where like the guard kind of seen like the olive branch out there, going, this way to get along, where the other guy saw this the opportunity to get in.
Yeah.
And one of the things that come to mind only because like I've brought up recently, like it's a very similar thing that was used by, as always, Irish history is the main thing we're going to talk about here. It's kind of similar tactic that was used by the IRA when he escaped the H-block during the Troubles. Because when he originally started that thing, they became essentially like the best pals of the prison of the guards there.
Wasn't it one guy who kind of befriended the superintendent?
He tried to get on the best of terms and be all buddy and everything like that. So
to get information.
Yeah, just to get out like everything there. So we do see a great parallel here where these tactics are used to get information, like to advance the guard's position, to advance the prisoner's position in this power struggle. And once the two of them kind of befriended with the guard here, which like the weakest link here was the CEO figure, the person who was most reluctant to use his power. Yeah. And from there they slowly started attacking him, started doing like insults, just throwing in, just constantly throwing out phrases like
with his head.
Like they were even like I think it was after the union worker was gone, they were actually able to get nearly a code of conduct for the guards to follow while issuing them.
It was like, if you're going to speak to us, you only one guard in our cell at a time, and you have to have your uniform fixed and proper. Yeah, like
they were needing to be checked as if like the roles were completely reserved and not like only like proper language to be used. Like the fact they were able to get that on them and create
like
their own code of
they should never even got to the point where they can dictate to the guards their terms.
And from there it's gone like, well, we've already the power dynamic was flipped. It's
but
the
even
guards
to mess with their heads
here.
even further, they said, oh, there's a rumor going around where I think one of the guards is going to be flipping to a prisoner.
Yeah.
Which was total bullshit, but they said, now, we're good mates with you. So, you stay on our good side, we'll stay on your good side. Just in case you're the one that gets demoted down to prisoner, at least you'll have some buddies on the inside. So they were really trying to mess with his head, like.
And it all could, like, pretty much the whole end point for this Project Mayhem was to eventually break out in the cell. So one of the guys realised that they were able to jimmy out, like, there was pretty much was a two-door system. You had an outer door, inner door. And the outer door it was pretty easy to just jimmy open, shove out.
It was kind of like a magnetic lock. So didn't they put something blocking?
No, that was for the inner door. The outer door was like they just forced it open. It wasn't that.
But the inner door they had to keep.
They jammed it in.
Yeah.
And they were really reluctant for a while, even like to take advantage of it. They were kind of just waiting out and having second thoughts. Like, I'm not too sure, man.
Yeah, it's like, are you chicken, mate? I was like, are we doing this tonight or not? And he was like, oh, I don't mind it. And they were kind of having second thoughts,
once they're able to break out, that essentially ended the current prisoner guard dynamic. Like from there, it completely collapsed, and the guards weren't able to take control of the situation from there. And
they waited till this tech CEO was on his shift. So
they waited specifically for the weakest link that they've identified. Once they broke out, there was nothing else that can be done from there. Like from there, they broke it into other cells and just went into kind of the guards' quarters and started nicking tea off them.
Yeah.
And from there, they started developing something that one of the guards suggested early on during the experiment. So this tech CEO, he really hated the power dynamic.
He had like an existential crisis, basically.
Well, he was kind of like he was looking at this from like a moral perspective, from a humanitarian perspective, going like, what right do we have to deprive these people from their rights and all that? And kind of looking at the logic, going like, none of us have done anything wrong here.
We're all actual here in theory.
These aren't actual prisoners. We're not actual guards. We should be treating each other as equals. And he was shut down from the start by the psychologists because they wanted a prison dynamic to see what would happen.
Yeah, and they didn't even explicitly tell him, but it was definitely hinted at. So he kind of knew then, okay, well, this is not what they're trying to go for in the experiment. So they shut that down. But I think one of the major points of this study that was different to Stanford was, in Stanford, right, it was said no violence. But from day one, when violence was used after things escalated, it was never reprimanded, it was never punished, nothing was ever done about it. And literally violence was used again and again and again. And that was a major factor in instilling fear into the prisoners. In the BBC study, not once in the entire study was any form of violence used at all. They didn't even touch each other, basically.
And
like, so when they broke out, nothing could be done. In the Stanford experiment, they would have grabbed the prisoners and dragged them back to their cells.
Like there was like in like kind of the main standoff when you had like the 2 prisoners in like kind of the rec room for the guards,
in the guards' tea room.
Like they were trying to lock them in there, trying to contain, and weren't able to do it fast enough. And so when the door was open to their face off, you had the prisoners going like, "I hear now," like going like, "No violence,
the prisoners ran over and just grabbed the door, and then everyone just had to take their hands off the door and kind of it was a standstill. Then. There's nothing they could do. Because it had been drummed into their heads even more. Because I'm sure now, like, they had either heard of the Stanford experiment or they were kind of... It was really enforced in their minds in the BBC study. Absolutely unacceptable to use violence. Because the independent ethics panel would have shut the whole experiment down immediately. So it was stressed even more in this. And I think that was one of the key differences as well as to why the results were a bit different. Because in the real world, violence is an actual big part of what happens inside. There was no police force. For example, in this, there was the guards, but, there was no way whatsoever to actually even grab the prisoners and take them back to their cells.
Yeah, so once the breakout happened, everything kind of dissolved. And also, like, kind of to reinforce, like, how important, like, the rule of no violence, like, the prisoners were using that to their advantage, so, like, the guards couldn't do anything, like, going, like, the whole, like, I hear now what you're doing, like, you're like, you're no alterations here, like, you're not being physical, are you? And the guards, like, have to know we're not.
Yeah.
They were like just taking advantage of the whole system around them. But once that happened, they essentially got the commune that the CEO.
Communism. So they went immediately from a prison system to lads, communism can't be too bad.
Just straight up equality, like sense. Everyone would be treated equal. They'd all put in their fair work. They'd all dally up and do all divisions and all, and we'll try and live equally in this system until the experiment's finished. And kind of one of the other areas we kind of brush past, like while 2 prisoners were kind of making up Project Mayhem, going for breaking out of their cells, there was a shortage of food coming in. Their food shipments were running a bit late, and so there was less food coming in. No sugar as well.
That really pissed off the guards. The Irish guard, no sugar for the tea.
Oh man,
he was fuming. Jeez, he goes, "Now listen, I can understand the beers, but no sugar for the tea. That's unacceptable."
That was just funny.
Yeah,
just
that was
to see going like, sugar's as normal. It's as normal you tease your bread.
We'll pass the beers, but no sugar for tea. No way.
That lad, he must have been terrified. He was around here during the snowstorm. It's like, what are you telling me? No bread, no milk, no sugar? How can we live?
No potatoes.
How can we live in this country, in this kind of state? For the minister, he's a minister.
I mean...
Well, he's a religious figure of sorts. He's a minister.
Is it a youth pastor?
I can't remember, but
I think
he made it clear from the start that he wouldn't eat pork, and as well as turkey, but he didn't mention from the start. So all he had like to serve was turkey, and so like for him, like my food's been contaminated, he can't eat. So he was going like on the night he decided to break out. He was going to bed on an empty stomach, and already they're barely giving enough food to keep going, like just enough to keep everyone on edge. So it was kind of like an added factor nearly to the whole thing, where you have one of them going like hungry, like the food shipments aren't coming in, everyone's getting a bit restless, going, we're going to actually have enough food for tomorrow. It's going like, this isn't looking too good. So once everything's solved, you brought in the whole commune system, and it was working actually pretty well. But while this breakout was happening, the psychologists were kind of talking back to BBC, going like, this isn't going too well. We don't know what's going to happen from this point onwards.
Never planned that, but
so
it was interesting because one of the things was the 2 kind of revolutionary prisoners. I guess
the revolution.
Yeah, I guess that's what we can call them. The 2 troublemakers, whatever you want to call it. Well, there's 3 of them, but one of them didn't really have much to say.
One of them was very individualistic in age, but he comes into his own part later.
But there was kind of 2 sort of troublemaker prisoners. They kind of, in their heads, they were the ones who started this. It was them breaking out that was the only reason that this new sort of commune system was put in place. And they kind of felt like they were getting marginalised a bit. It's like, well, everyone in this commune was seen as equal. They were kind of going, well, listen, like we should be getting extra rations here. We should be, getting extra time in the basketball court or whatever, because we're the ones who started this. If it wasn't for us, you'd still be prisoners and guards. So they kind of got a bit bored of this whole system immediately, and they were like, well, I don't want to do chores here. I don't want to do chores in this system. So they kind of got fed up, and then in less than 24 hours, they were already sort of plotting and scheming. How can we kind of revolt against the system again?
But there wasn't really much system to revolt for at that stage.
Well, there was still a system in place in terms of they had like a list of tasks that everyone had to do in this commune.
But there was no figure. That's the thing. Like
Yeah,
beforehand,
there was
they had the symbol to fight against, which was the guards.
Okay, but now they were still in a revolutionary state against the system, the commune system.
But it was so loose that there just wasn't anything there. Like psychologists kept issuing out like the questionnaires, and while like some type of work wasn't being done in the commune, these questionnaires were still being answered. And the weirdest thing that they noticed is that everyone was actually more willing to adopt an authoritarian regime after the commune system, because since the lack of structure wanted people to have like structure again, to the point where they were actually willing to kind of accept nearly a dictator system in place.
This sort of commune system has kind of been built up in their heads as like, an Eden where everyone's equal and everyone eats nice food. But then when it actually happens, they're kind of like, this isn't what it's cracked up to be.
It's gone.
They're like, I've no one like telling me what to do. Like we're just sitting around doing chores and everyone gets eaten. It's actually quite boring. We don't feel like we've roles, and they kind of then felt like they needed to change the system altogether. And they actually did say in those questionnaires that they would rather have a figure with too much power rather than have no one with power.
I was thinking about this for a bit, and I was thinking more kind of how Ireland was initially found, like from like the whole start, where like kind of we gauged our war in independence and like engaged in civil war, and by kind of like 1922, 1923, we had a free state engaging where we had like nearly full power in our affairs. But that's how it would cause the power factor within, I say, with Ireland, because you went from a state where England had most to say in the affairs of Ireland to Ireland having the affairs of Ireland.
Now we have to decide everything.
I was thinking, could that be nearly like, you seen like similarity there in the prison experiment, like the lack of structure wanted people to crave structure.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, like, could you need to find a parallel, like the lack of an experienced government in Ireland, could that have led actually to the adoption of the Catholic Church into the Irish society?
That's a good point.
One aspect was it to divide, like, the Catholic identity was meant to be treated, the Irish identity just separate from England to show we're two different people.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But, like, the Catholic Church formed nearly an iron grip on Irish society for decades. They owned a quarter of land to the whole island, and a lot of laws, like the Catholic Church influenced lawmaking in Ireland to the point where it was illegal to be gay. Gay marriage was illegal, abortion was illegal, divorce was illegal, contraceptives were illegal, and they brought in a blasphemy law. Now, 5 of those laws we've gotten rid of.
Yeah, we still have a few to go.
We still have blasphemy law, but all of that wouldn't have been there with the Catholic Church influence.
That's a very good point. It's like, I suppose we've something to latch onto there, whereas it's a system. It's got a very rigid structure. It's got a set of rules. It's got a leadership structure. We can look to them for guidance. We can identify them because they're seen as part of the Irish identity as opposed to British culture. Because, Irish identified with the Catholic Church, whereas the British was the Church of England. So that's actually a really good point. It's like we kind of then were out on our own, and we were like, well, who can we kind of look to for guidance and leadership?
You can give a structure in this power vacuum.
So it's kind of like, well, the church kind of adopted that role, where they were kind of seen as the people to kind of guide the public in the kind of new era of independence.
This kind of ideology and political stance was a major point that Haslam and Riker were making during the end of their experiment. They were making the point where politics and kind of like group mentality added on a kind of an extra layer dynamic to a prison environment that's not really saw in their own experiment with the BBC. So in the BBC prison experiment, everyone there was British citizens. Everyone there were like, at the end of the day, same people, same blood, same all that. They could all relate in a certain level. They could all see each other, like, we're the same people here. There's no point to go overboard. Like, I might see them in the streets there, I might see them in the, while I'm off doing my work and all that. But they were making this point in the whole kind of Abu Ghraib situation. Again, we can't effectively say words.
Abu Ghraib, that's probably close enough.
You had like a huge difference between two political stances, where you had one group of individuals seeing the other group as the lesser, as the weaker. Yeah. They were again forming these parallels again because, well, when you bring up psychology, Nazi Germany, you just...
Yeah,
they offered a lot.
Comparison.
They were bringing this up kind of comparisons on like how the Nazis treated different people under prisoners of war camps. So when they imprisoned, say, the British in their POWs, were actually bad environments, but they were still kind of seen as a sort of equal. They were seen like these were worthy fighters. They fought well. They just kind of waited out in their
sort
time.
Of a tiered class system, yeah.
But when they were up against like the Russians and and for that they were seen as a lesser people. They were seen as these like people to get rid of, and so they Russian POWs had a much harsher experience compared to British POWs, and that's all because of the political dynamic and ideology within kind of like Nazi Germany itself. They saw one group of people as lessers to them, so they could do whatever they want to it. You had the mentality going on in Abu Ghraib with the whole like horrible things going on there, but that lacks in the BBC experiment because everyone in the end was an equal. There isn't this massive okay. Some people, some extremes might, they're talking shite, but there's no lesser or greater race fucking in Britain. They're all equals.
But I suppose instead that was meant to be represented by the fact that half were prisoners and half were guards. Yeah. It wasn't meant to be kind of division based on race. It was meant to be division based on positions of power. But the guards were just to symbolise a powerful class.
But this again pokes a hole in kind of Stanford experiment where Dr. Zimbardo was making the point where the institution, the whole prisoner guard divide is enough to create these forms of oppression. You had Hansler and Riker were making the point where like it's so much more complicated history, politics, ideology, it's so much more levels needed to create like this kind of like oppressive atmosphere.
Yeah, it's also about group dynamics as well, and like when will people resist and when will people just go along with being treated as a kind of a lesser citizen, But so at the very end then as well, one of the kind of more rebellious prisoners, he decided, right, okay, feck this commune system, I'm going to be the new sort of military dictator.
Yeah, they're going up straight for a military coup.
Literally, yeah. So he basically goes to the two other troublemakers. Okay, right. What we'll do is we'll reinstitute this kind of system of prisoners and guards. We'll put that back. But this time, I'm the one deciding who's the prisoners and guards. So he got the Irish guard on his side, and he got the two troublemakers, and he was going to recruit a few others, and he was going to write up a manifesto. And he kind of requested of the experimenters to get a military uniform put into the prison. And he was kind of going to wake everyone up. He was kind of in this manic state late at night where he was like up all night when the rest of them were asleep. He was kind of like thinking, how am I going to do this? Writing down a manifesto. What are the rules going to be? And he kind of knew there was a craving there from certain people to put a sense of structure back into the prison. So he kind of had this idea of creating this system then where they would go back into prisoners and guards, and he would be the head, followed by the two sort of troublemakers as his kind of right hand men. And basically just at that point, that's when the experimenters kind of said, right, okay, that's enough, we're going to call a stop to it.
He came in about a day and a half early than expected, and everyone kind of agreed, like you had the independent panel kind of seeing this like we're getting into dangerous territory here, we need to cut off and end it here. One of the ending points that was made kind of at the end of the documentary was that the whole vacuum of power kind of is nearly a breeding ground for tyranny. That because of the lack of a structure and like the whole the whole vacuum of power that was gone in the prison structure, it created the ultimate environment for a dictatorship to rise. And you can bring up like many points in history kind of where like in it this kind of like supports this view where kind of like the build up to the whole Nazi Germany. You had like Hitler's whole rise to power in Germany going like was in a horrible state after World War One. Had to pay massive reparations. Like 1929 was in like the biggest depression I think the world's ever seen. So they were looking for a strong figure to move them forward. Yeah. And again in Russia after kind of the communist revolution in 1917. You had essentially the people believing like the upper class people didn't care about how the country was run. They didn't care about the people themselves, and so they overthrew them. Ultimately, in the end, installed a military dictatorship that took full control because of the power vacuum. And there's probably many more examples going around that we haven't covered because we haven't done enough history, and we're just picking two obvious ones to look at.
History for the leaving.
Yeah, we didn't go outside of Europe. We done America and Europe, and that's it.
Yeah,
we didn't go much further.
World,
and us and our ends.
Obviously, yeah. But no, I suppose one of the interesting things though as well, going back to the kind of no physical violence, that kind of point, like it didn't really kind of reflect well on trying to extrapolate this to society overall. Like there was no police system. Like for example, when they had this commune, right? Yeah. If someone wanted to just say, okay, feck this, I'm going to take everything for myself. Yeah. Right? There's literally nothing anyone else could do because they couldn't even touch your man. If he like one guy decided, okay, I'm going to take extra rations.
Yeah.
All they could do is talk to him. There's no policing system put in place which could say,
well,
no, you actually can't do this.
They had rules set up, but no one was willing to follow them.
No one could enforce them.
Yeah.
There was like, if, as I said, if one of the troublemaker prisoners decided, okay, well, I'm going to take extra dinner just because I want to, and now there's no guard prisoner dynamic and everyone's in a commune. If there's no sort of way of policing or enforcing or being able to go, okay, no, you literally can't, and taking it back off them, they couldn't do that. And that was one of the interesting things as well. People were literally just allowed to do whatever they wanted. There was no actual way. Even over the course of the whole experiment, they had punishments they could do, like solitary confinement.
Yeah.
They could have them on just a bread and water diet. The guards rarely ever. I think once they put 2 prisoners in solitary confinement for an hour, and that was it.
They were cycling through them because of the keys.
Yeah, but that was it. Other than that, they didn't actually restrict their exercise times. They didn't put them on bread and water diets or restrictions. And it was kind of interesting. Like they never really, the guards never really were able to take their dominance, or assert their dominance, or take control of the prison at all. And that's one of the things that led to this kind of breakdown then, that led to the commune and the authoritarian kind of structure after it.
It was an interesting experiment. It was interesting to see like how different it was compared to the Stanford experiment. Just how much they diverged, and also kind of like opened up more, kind of like I guess like kind of more understanding how like just human like psyche works. Like Stanford experiment is kind of a great example of how like corrupt
power
corrupt,
can corrupt,
power can corrupt, but it also can trickle down. Like if you're higher ups, it's like essentially encouraging you to do horrible things. You're eventually gonna like go on to it, going, well, they're meant to be the final check and balance. They say they're okay, then I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Where the BBC experiment is kind of, it's a great in showing how dangerous it is to have kind of a lack of structure and kind of like lack of a proper power system involved in anywhere.
It kind of shows just like even a mild system of structure and power is better than none.
Yeah.
And because if you have none, it'll immediately turn into a dictatorship, a complete tyranny. Because if everyone's seen as equal and no one can stop anyone else from doing anything, you're going to get one person who's going to be like, okay, well, feck this, I'm just going to take control. And there's nothing anyone else can do about it.
Some may be willing to equate the current economic state in America, or literally any monopoly that would develop from a full free market.
Oh, yeah.
You could easily just use that experiment. Like, this is why we can't have the full free market.
Yeah. It's too much power to people with no responsibility.
Here you go, libertarians. This is why we can't go that far, because eventually going to have the monopoly.
Someone will feck it up. Yeah.
Well, I think that's everything we've got to say there, Colm. It was another great podcast of us talking shite.
Yeah, as usual. Wouldn't want to have it any other way.
Okay, I hope everyone enjoyed, and I hope everyone is going to actually go up and look things up about this, because we probably got a lot wrong.
I mean, hopefully.
Okay, maybe not a lot wrong, but more like we've missed a good bit here.
Yeah, I think we weren't bad though.
If you continue on and going through everything we've gone through as you've listened from our free speech podcast, everyone should be pretty much everyone should be encouraged to kind of like look up the information we're using here, kind of look up anything. We'll try and throw in a few things that like in the description will help you. A few websites, some of the articles that we're using to get some of the information. I know BBC has set up a particular like a website like dedicated for the whole experiment. So if you just want to go look through it,
interesting.
Check it out,
especially to compare it to the Stanford. Like it genuinely is interesting. So
I hope everyone enjoyed listening, and we will talk to you next time.
We'll see you next week.